Namaskar, this is Eng Suraj Singh, professional engineer in India, Bharat. In continuation to my previous discussions about the buildings, about engineering, this is the serial number 7. Engineering-based development appraisal to general public, professional awareness, backbone of any nation, building activities, systems, concrete activities, execution, supervision. Now this is what I am going to brief as I used to do in the past, blog videos. The world of engineering sciences, their applications, impact on the economy, health, safety and environment, quality, society, all relevant and others. Buildings construction in Bharat, that is India, and advice to general public, buildings execution and supervision, detailed description of buildings, construction, concrete operation and procedures, construction understandable knowledge, work awareness. The objectives that I used to tell previously as well. Engineering science applies to the whole world development. Engineering is the basis of any society. Without engineering, the human had to remain ancient. Modernization means engineering. Engineering means modernization. Civil engineering is the basis of all structures and infrastructures. Designs and planning of buildings is a vast discipline. Building is the most significant commodities to make a lifetime purchase, or you can say lifetime achievement for certain people. The owner should be careful while spending money on buildings. Owner should not trust the building quick builders or other trade-oriented persons or artisans who have no fundamental background and fundamental engineering knowledge. Civil engineer service is a must to be availed of by all people who are interested in getting a building. It is easy to know something about anything, if not everything. Don't be jack of all or master of none, but try to understand as a preliminary knowledge for your own benefit, at least for the purpose of knowing while it is being carried out by some of your contractor or some of your architect or anybody else. Engineering is an art-based science with widest network. In fact, engineering is a mental religion, you can say. It's a creation of the mind, it's a vision, it's a concept. Without engineering, there could be no Ramayana. It could not be completed anyway. And the building that was set on fire in Mahabharata is also an example of negative engineering or destructive engineering. The bridge that is known as Ram Setu, connecting the two nations, Bharat and Sri Lanka, is also a marvel of ancient engineering, not learned from any university, but from Vishwakarma, the universal engineer of the universe. This bridge was designed and constructed by the engineer Nehru in 5 days under the direction of Lord Rama, Sri Rama, Bhagwan Rama. You have a right to check about your building. You should do it. Don't depend upon others. Don't take it for granted. It should be well returned. You must get the returns you are spending on the monies. I'm not talking of profits, but the money should return you the best and optimum use of the building you are getting. The owner should treat the building as a temple. As your soul is going to stay in this, your body is going to stay it. For those users who shall live for decades and for centuries with their souls, the owner spends money on the buildings and therefore must be allowed to obtain the money returns in the form of a sound and durable delivery of products, that is building. Without engineering, nothing is possible. Yet professionals are most unbeneficial and society is unaware about their works and sacrifices. The public has to look into the pros and cons of the engineering sciences and recognize the efforts contributed by the so-called professional and engineers. The purchaser has to involve oneself to contribute for a better product, for getting a better product. Better product means a good building, a viable building, a useful building, a trustworthy building where one can sleep sleep. You can stay there. Building should be treated like any live machine that works as seen by the eyes, but building is not considered as such. The building also vibrates, aspires, and talks to the human being and responses while it performs forever. A good structure shall get in a special type of happiness in the person who uses that, as well as the person who designed and supervised it. When engineer passes or supervisor passes around his own created building, sometimes back he feels happy that there is no cracks or there is no bad elements indicated or bad effects indicated on the structure. A kind of undefined happiness comes into the engineer, while the other side, when it shows defects, it is felt very bad by the professional. No politics can sustain the national advancement without the role of engineering. Civil engineering is the basics of all engineering and all structures. Engineers can change the national status and national power in the whole world. Engineers are to be credited with the due status, due social regards. The engineers are not seen in public, but must be recognized for the sake of better understanding and better appraisal, and give the due status and regards which is due to them. In most cases, engineers intend to deliver goods quality products, but due to special circumstances of commercial benefits to the promoters, they have reservations too. They are not full liberal. They are under circumstances that cannot be defined. They are not whole and soul. Buildings are required for every manufacturing unit, for every residence, for all residences and commercial units, for all railway halls and for all offices, for most of the activities and means required in life. Engineers have a dignified duty towards the society, as the society depends exclusively on the services of the engineers for the award for the user. All other professions shall be worthless without the contribution by engineering in the global scenario. Engineering travels its journey from a dream to a made-up project, to created product, to a manufactured project, a dream coming true. Buildings are a must for the operations of all other professions. Do not allow your building to convert to a graveyard for future. Building is not meant for a day or for a month, but for generations to come. Save your generations from dying under the collapse of bad buildings. Actually, buildings builds the human. The building is a live art, a live science, a live architecture, a live emotion, a live security. Design and construction should be considered religiously, apart from the life consideration of profit making. It's not the question of saving money. It is the question of getting a good building. You are spending money. You must get a good building, a soul building for you, a building in which you are living satisfactorily. You are living in peace. Your religion is living in that. Your people are living in that. That's what I can explain. Now let's see. The public of the whole world living on the earth has been developing various nations as well as the globe. The contributions from all fields of human life are responsible to make it, but a considerable contribution comes from the fields of engineering of all disciplines. Without the contribution of engineering, the life shall cease to no air. The history is full of various legends of engineering all over the globe. Though there was no engineering education in those days, yet the minds were very useful, were full of engineering knowledge or full of engineering concepts and ideas that were inculcated either by the God gifts or by the ancestors. Engineering of a needle to the space vessel is also a part of engineering. You can say manufacturing of these items is a part of engineering. All systems are running based on any branch of engineering. There is no item that is not owned by any engineering branch. The engineering involves a part of art, a part of applied mechanics, part of mathematics, part of applied sciences, part of health and safety environment with the assistance of all these codes and national and international laws. Engineering is a very complex term in this age, as contributions from various engineering disciplines are required to accomplish any small task or manufactured piece. Civil engineer takes the lead at the initial stages and contributes to the full execution of any project. The buildings are the creations of the architectural and the structural engineers with credited supports of the subsidiary disciplinary engineers. Then the workers, specialists, as well as common also all respect from the society, as without their laborious contributions the people cannot live in beautiful houses. House is a pious place for the people who have to live in that for decades, while for a promoter or builder it is just like the process in a factory or making profit at the risk of those who use. Be, be an active supervisor yourself. Buildings are imagined, thought, conceived, developed, produced, viewed, landscaped, stars, etc. Buildings are the glory for a king as well as for a peon. Buildings are the respects for all. Building is a protection from weather and constitutes a security. It is significant to be apprised to have a good awareness, just like the people have awareness about other spheres. The following shall allow this appraisal of the reader to know some good respect of the concrete activities. Don't take the building for granted. Take care for everything. Building is very important for everybody. It's not so easy to be constructed. It must be given all due considerations. Now, from the previous article, point number 34. Concrete. Pouring concrete is also a significant activity that involves complete technology. It's very expensive, very direct, very wide. It's no more simple. There has been a lot of research in the concrete technology for many years. Now it is a very big subject. The concrete cannot be taken for granted as just a mix for the purpose of filling the formworks, shuttering areas, etc., but must be given full care by the involvement of technological care under the supervision of qualified civil engineers and specialist supervisors. The concrete is such a material that is easy to mix, transport and to pour, so that it sets and solidifies to hardening. Once the concrete is poured and hardens, it is too difficult to take out for any remedial action or should any mistake done. It's a big issue. It cannot be taken for easy handling. Many examples have been available that indicates that the requirement of removal of in concrete after it is laid wrongly. Even the investigation takes a lot of time and costs money that goes to the project. The expense of taking out shall be too high, making it incumbent on the engineers to be thorough on the designs and the supervision aspects. The owner should also be vigilant on the concrete operations, but it has been widely experienced that the owners or users do not take any care about the value of the concrete during construction, but are only inclined to finish the project for the sake of earning profits. It is a great cause of concern. I have not seen any owner or user who do care for their houses structures, rather are exclusively busy with the contractors or the architect for the best finishes, as well as internal and external decoration, ignoring that the decoration is supported by the structures that has been erected or laid on weak strengths, but nobody listens to the engineer. Engineers are taken for granted by stating that the engineer shall charge considerable sum on account of fee. In Bharat, that is India, the architects too generally mislead the owners, telling that they can manage the work through their staff or themselves, for which they themselves are not experts. Ultimately, the building and the user or the owner suffers immensely, having a substandard product in the form of bad structure. Let's now discuss about the procedures or methods of pouring concrete. The equipment required in relations to mix on site have already been indicated on the last article. I will just recall them, but before that, I will refer to the provisions of National Building Code 2005 that requires the involvement of structural engineers, civil engineers, construction engineers and others for the purpose of buildings. And the authorities like municipalities and other authorities must incorporate these proposed and required regulations into their bylaws, building bylaws. But that has been done only by certain municipalities, and most of the municipalities and authorities are supposed to incorporate these into their proposed bylaws or would be bylaws. Corporate member of the Institution of Engineers India are certified engineers chartered engineers or professional engineers. They are well qualified, well experienced to carry out the operations of the buildings, of designs and construction and supervision, etc. The services of these guys, these professionals, must be availed for getting a good building. It's in your interest, it's in public interest, it's in social interest, and it's in national interest. Concrete. Now, for mixing concrete unit basically a concrete mixer, certain vibrators, and concrete workers and other tools, other items that were previously explained. The concrete mixer requires proper position at the planned location so that aggregate, sand and cement are well stored around. These materials should be preferably stored on hard and dry surface. The cement is also stacked adjacent to the concrete mixer. The ratio of the mix has to be measured in case the mixer has been provided with the batching equipment and the dial gauge with facility of water pipe into the mixing drum so that water can be passed on to inside. Otherwise, a standard measuring box equivalent to 1 bag of cement is to be used. The box could be fabricated of timber to match 365 into 300 into 300 mm, provided with top open. It's like open box with two strong handles fixed to it so that two persons can lift it after filling the ingredients. Depending on the production quantities, the required number of boxes can be calculated. That could be up to 2, 3 or 2 numbers. The procedure of taking out the wet concrete into the receivers such as any dumper or manual first-class circular steel trough is also to be decided. It is suggested that the cement bag should be directly disposed into the mixer drum and not through any other means. It has been seen that various local subcontractors claiming to be experts use first-class or other pouring means for the cement into the drums, as the small drum they use are not attached with the hopper facility. This is not a good practice, this is a bad practice. In case a weigh batcher is installed, all the ingredients are measured into the hopper with care that no aggregate remains touching the bottom surface of the hopper to avoid added reaction to the dial gauge reading. From time to time, the aggregate should be cleared from below the hopper. Adequate, comfortable access is required to allow transport of the wet mix immediately to the proposed pour location spot. All routes should be well defined and safety warning indicated. Access to and the return from routes should be altered from time to time depending on the volume of pour. Vibrators should be kept ready in the good working conditions. A standby is very important. Standby vibrator actually, I'm telling. The whole volume of the form should be clean and steel wet. Why the steel should be wet and form should be wet? Wetting of the steel is necessary to avoid the flash setting. The whole volume of the form should be cleaned and steel wet. A trained supervisor should keep a close watch full time during the pour. If possible, the concrete temperature and the air content should be recorded. The temperature should not cross the defined limit. It has been noticed that in Bharat, the engineers do not bother about the temperature control, but particularly in hot weather conditions, the requirement meeting is a must. Once all arrangements are cleared for the activity of pouring, the pour should be started from one point. The pouring should proceed gradually and in one direction. If the volume of the pour is not abnormal, abnormal means high quantity. The pour has to be laid in layers not more than 450 mm in any case. The reason being that the vibrator needle must go penetrating the whole thickness of the wet concrete for the purpose of compacting. Without the best compaction, the concrete is nothing but like a very weak material of sand. The behavior of the concrete would be like that. Compaction helps the concrete to achieve the density, leading to the durability and strength of the concrete material, hardened concrete material. The pouring should be continuous and no cold joint is allowed. Cold joint means in case of a break in the pour at one location and some minutes lapse on the next batch of supply or some hours lapse. Previous concrete should be green to receive the new batch, otherwise cold joint is formed. This means old concrete and new concrete both wet, but the effect is hot and cold. All areas planned for the pour should be completed in one go. Otherwise, a construction joint shall be required. Sometimes, due to the incomplete pour, caused due to any unforeseen breakdown of the machine or any other reason, the concrete pour is stopped for another day, for future day. In that case, a stopper is to be immediately installed on the last unfinished edges after due compaction, so that before the next pour, the other day, the previous surface could be scabbled and new concrete laid. Scabbling or hacking allows the laidens or the set cement slurry to be taken out and the aggregates exposed, so that a proper bond between the hardened and the wet concrete is made successfully. During the pour of the raft, since the thickness and the area is considerable, surface finishing masons are required to give a good finish to the top surfaces after initial setting of the mix. Even for the isolated footings, the masons are required. These finished surfaces are called unformed surfaces. The sides of the footings or the raft are called formed surfaces. During the operation of the pour, many hours elapse, within which the laid concrete starts setting and getting hardened. Immediate curing is required for the completed portion of the mix. Immediate curing can be conducted by spraying the curing compound on the surfaces of the finished concrete, followed by covering with the polythene sheet. After the work is over, the whole area is duly protected by the foregoing method. Next, after a lapse of a few hours, when all the concrete starts getting hardening, the laid polythene sheet is to be removed timely, and the Hessian cloth is laid on the concrete and covered with the removed polythene sheet again. The Hessian cloth should all time remain saturated with water for a good curing practice for a number of specified days that could vary from 7 to 14 depending on the type of cement used. Also, the polythene sheets should be covered full time on the wet Hessian cloth so that water is not evaporated. During pouring, care has to be taken that no reinforcing bar is removed or dislocated from its original place location. Nobody should be allowed to walk on the poured concrete on the same day of pour. It should not be accessible to every person. Only persons responsible for the polythene sheets and ration and watering should be allowed on specific ways prepared specifically for the purpose of curing exclusively. During pour, the samples of the concrete During pour, the samples of the concrete must be taken in to the standard concrete cubes, that is 150 into 150 into 150 mm, open on top. At least 6 cubes should be taken for each 20 cubic meter of pour. These should be marked on top about the location of the pour. The cubes, after filling and compaction, should be covered and kept in shade. These should be taken out of the steel molds the next day and transported to the storing tank of water, where these shall lie for the required number of days for the purpose of curing. Various types of concretes are utilized on various structures. Various types of mixes are utilized for various elements of any structure. For example, the consistency of the concrete mix should be stiff for a rough foundation, while for a narrow column it may have semi-flow or viscous consistency. The engineer has to keep in live watch on the curing activities as required. Minimum temperature maintenance is a must by the application of curing. Though water is used for general curing purpose, but it may be cheap despite the contractors avoid. As I said earlier, that the curing is like sanjeevani for the concrete durability. It's life for the concrete. The sides shall also require curing after these and removed the next day on the same mode using Asian cloths and the polythene membrane layers, keeping wet round the clock for a defined number of days. All the rubbish concrete should be removed from the site and the mixer washed properly. Here a few points attract explanations and importance. As I told, the rebars or reinforcing bars that we use to be included into the RCC element should be clear in color, that is silver color, shining color. There should be no oil on those. There should be no rust on those. Even the loose dust is not allowed. Everything should be clean. If rust doesn't go, we need grid blasting on the rebars, reinforcing bars. The bars should be procured straight, transported straight to the site in 12 meters length, standard length, or whatever standard lengths are available according to the production proratas. There should be no bent bars taken from the factory. I have seen, particularly in Delhi and other cities, that people are using trucks, transporting steel pipe trucks, and all the long bars of 12 meters are bent, and these bent bars are transported directly, and then they are straightened and cut to the required shape. According to structural engineering, this is a wrong practice. One bar is allowed, reinforcing bar is allowed to be worked on once. Once, if it is bent in the factory itself, it's worked, and it is not allowed to be straightened. It's the wastage of steel, a wrong practice for the execution of steel. Bars must be transported straight. Shutters that we use for the phone work should be of the good timber ply and battens or of any other material. It should be steel also. The scaffold and formwork are very important elements of temporary works. Temporary works here I mean the works which are going to be used for a temporary activity so that a permanent element is produced, permanent member is produced. Here, centering and shutting, that's called, we call it now scaffolding system. There are various scaffolding systems all over. Various proprietary systems, they supply particularly on buying or on the basis of hire. These systems are available. The system should be properly checked whether on one vertical member, that is called standard, the load directly coming from the poured concrete and working and workers should be taken by the standards rightly, and there are horizontal members, vertical members, bracing members. These systems are proprietary and can be used very successfully. They are very fast for the purpose of erection. Similarly, the formwork, that is battens, timber formwork, we can be used successfully on them. 18 mm ply or 20 mm ply can be used for the purpose of bottom and sides for a normal thickness of slabs, and these should be properly jointed. There should be no gap between the two plies. Gap should not be allowed. Ply should be smooth and side should be good, smooth. Proper access should be provided to the formwork so that easy working of the pouring is done. There should be no accident. Proper temporary access should be provided by employing stairs and steps or wood ladders. Railing should be provided so that nobody falls from a height. These are very important points. The safety of any temporary work, that is scaffolding and formwork system, must be certified by a third party if possible. or a safety inspector or safety officer must check that and issue a certificate prior to using that or prior to allowing the access of the workers to that. Steel rebars. Steel rebars or reinforcing bars must be properly placed and proper cover must be allowed there so that concrete goes below the steel bars properly. Good chairs should be allowed. These are very important points actually. And we can say since the steel is very hot in summer, while work is done, the temperature can cross 50 or 60. It must be kept wet temporarily prior to starting the pouring of concrete. By pouring normal water onto the steel bars, the temperature comes down. The temperature of concrete is say 32, that is acceptable during pour. And the temperature of steel bars should not be more than 32 to 40. If it's 50 or 60, there will be a temperature difference between the two steel and the concrete. This will make it gradient and that will cause the flash shedding of the concrete. Flash shedding of the concrete onto the steel is not a good practice, it's not acceptable. Setting should be normal. Similarly, the timber also gets hot heated up during sun and water should be laid on that as well, poured on that, keep it normalized. There should be proper access or proper hole in the formwork so that cleaning can be done successfully prior to starting of the concrete. And for that, the hole is useful. Compressor can clear out all the dust and all unwanted particles from wood or from steel or from binding wire. All levels should be fixed. Thickness to indicate the thickness of the slab or any other floor, whatever it is. Even for the columns, the height should be fixed by fixing a mark or fixing a triangular piece on that. That is called, whatever it is called, edge piece. And also for the foundations or for any element that is to be concreted. It's very important. When preparatory works are done, these are all called supporting works. For example, I told you before, formwork and centering, shuttering, access ways, railings, stairs, steps, all these are called temporary works, while the cutting, binding, and placing the reinforcement, steel, and mixing of concrete are for permanent inclusions. There are two types of inclusions, permanent and temporary. So temporary inclusions are temporary works and permanent inclusions are reinforcing bars and concrete. Pouring of concrete is very important from the point of view of manual mixing. Well, I should not say manual mixing, machine mixing, but by using site mixing. You can say site mixing is it requires a higher degree of quality control than centralized batching plant mixing. Site mixing should be supervised closely and